Welcome to the Ironbird Podcast, live from the NBAA event in Las Vegas, Nevada. I'm joined by Doug Gollan of Private Jet Card Comparisons and Richard Coe from WINGX. Doug analyzes buyer behavior from the program trends, where Richard takes the actual flying data and analyzes that way. Together, we're going to connect sentiment from the customer and data to see what's shifted from last year and what are going to be the trends moving forward. This time last year, or maybe a couple days off, we looked at flying in the month prior, September, down 6%, and some of the biggest losers being in the light jet. Yeah. Richard, how is that compared to now what we're looking for this year compared to that data from last year?
The data tells us a very different situation. Last September was a one-off on the negative side, 6% down for that month compared back in 2023.
Yep.
If you looked at the whole year, Jan through September last year, the market, the global market, in terms of flights, was down by 1.6%. It's now up by 3.7%.
Wow, big difference.
So that's quite a big difference.
Yeah. What's changed?
This is the number one market that we're sitting in. It's got 68% of global flight activity happening in the US. And, back last year in September, October, when we were talking, we had a different administration. And I think that is a big factor.
Yep. Doug, when we talked a lot about airplane sizes, and we looked at some of the light jets, certain ones being a big loser. We also looked at people migrating to larger airplanes in the fractional jet card space. Is that still the same case as it was last year that it is this year?
It's interesting because we just completed our annual survey of subscribers, and in terms of the percentage of our subscribers who use fractional ownership, that stayed flat. So about 22% of Private Jet Card Comparison subscribers are in a fractional program. The jet cards ticked back up a couple points, so up to about 70% who use jet cards. And I think that's because there's been a continuation where they're relaxing a lot of the COVID era restrictions, less peak days, bringing down the call-outs, bringing down the daily minimums and things like that.
Have costs changed?
The costs actually are up about 2.4% year over year, and that's for the guaranteed rate, guaranteed availability jet cards. But I'm not sure that tells the whole story because I get a lot, of the offers, subscribers pass them along. And so we track the retail pricing. What you can see is buy 25 hours and what you get free, or give us $200,000 in the credits. So I feel like it's back to sort of the pre-COVID, when I always give the analogy to our subscribers. I ask them if they've ever been to the Grand Bazaar in Istanbul. Mm-hmm. And I say it's like going into the Grand Bazaar.
Yep.
You call people up and it's like, as you're trying to get off the phone, well, what if I gave you?
Yep.
And so I think there's a lot of wheeling and dealing going on.
But if we look at charter numbers being up, right, 3% during COVID, as that rose, pricing, the deals kind of moved away. Do you think as the demand stays strong, you'll see jet card pricing and less flexibility in the jet card and fractional space?
Well, I think it's, it depends. It's one of those, your mileage will vary. Because if you look at NetJets, they're back with jet cards.
Which must mean something, right? If they're back offering jet cards, it must mean they have availability to sell, right?
So they've got, I think, about 12 different varieties of jet cards. But they have one where there's 90 blackout dates, and then the other one has 45 blackout dates and 45 peak days.
Yep.
And so I think it's an indication that they realize how important jet cards are in terms of greasing the sails for the fractional ownership. But I think it's also an indication that they're still concerned about what Richard is saying, the demand, and especially the demand from the people who are buying the fractional shares.
Yeah.
And I think they're very, like FlexJet, they're reticent that they don't want to get into another situation like during COVID when, they were having trouble, meeting the demands of their customers. So I wouldn't, if NetJets all of a sudden decreases the number of blackout days markedly or peak days, then I think we could, read more into it. Right now, I think it's just toes back in the water.
Richard, regionally, we looked at corridors that were shifting demand. We were seeing demand shift down to Texas, down to Florida, out of New York, out of California.
Right.
Has that stayed the same? Are we still seeing that move from out of California, out of New York, or have people moved back? What's the data telling you that? Where's the demand in the U.S. at least moving towards these days?
Yeah, this year it's Texas. Texas is top of the tree. It's shown really, really strong double-digit growth. So if you think about the U.S. as a whole, we've seen about 3.5% increase in flights. If you look at Texas, it's closer to 10%.
Yeah.
So that's where it's been strongest. That said, California, New York, East Coast, West Coast had a bit of a flat, if not negative period last year, bit of a rebound this year.
Okay. So California's coming back. They're not losing, but Texas is the real winner.
Yeah. And Florida's still the strongest. Florida is number one hub. So Texas is number two, but Texas has had relatively the stronger year.
We looked last year, Doug, about in down markets, right? We talked about buttoning the hatch a little bit to make sure you're careful, and that relates to the jet card providers you give large amounts of money to. In a growing market, is that a little bit less risk to take that flyer with maybe the jet card company that's offering a great deal?
I think, flyers are smart from the perspective of they see the pricing and then they see, in some cases the financials, and there are differences. And so when we do our research, I think it's around 70% say, when I'm giving a company money, obviously I'm concerned. But the largest percentage of the people, the subscribers who say, I'm concerned about the financial viability of my jet card company, they check off the box, which is, goes on to say, but since they're privately held, I really have no idea. And so I think nobody wants to lose their money. Everybody always says, it's the other guys that are having problems. We're financially secure.
Yeah.
And so I think people make a calculated risk, and I think I had done it last year. I had mentioned it. We have on our website, it's called the Jet Card Haircut Calculator. And so if you lose money on a jet card, you can do the math. How much did I lose versus what was the rate and how much did I spend?
Yeah.
And you can figure out, did I still come out ahead or did I lose money? And I think, there's the private aviation user market's not homogeneous.
Yeah.
So there are people who only want to be with the big established companies, and then there are people who are looking for the deal. And, the thing that I would say is the people who are in the current deals, if you looked at where they were before, they were with other companies that were offering deals.
This episode is brought to you by Charter Flight Support, the only coverage in private aviation that protects you when an aircraft mechanical issue stops your aircraft from flying. CFS not only provides financial support if the replacement aircraft costs more, they also help locate and book quality backup aircraft fast. Learn more at charterflightsupport.com, and don't forget to sign up for their newsletter, The Fix, for real-time insights on private jet trends, aircraft types, and rates. AI, I feel like from last year to this year was really grown. We were talking early AI last year, right? But I feel like over the last 12 months, it's taken over. It's been what everyone's talking about. Richard, we talked about using machine learning in the WINGX forecasting. How has that grown over the last year of your use of AI in machine learning?
Yeah. Well, a few points to cover there. One thing that we ought to say is that when we look at the turnaround in terms of demand for bizjet activity, part of that story is the success of the US, at least the kind of the funding round and the deal-making phase in AI in the US, because that has undoubtedly generated demand for bizjet. There's a direct correlation there, and that gets me on to one of the ways in which we've used AI. So far at WINGX, We've used it primarily on the research side. So you may have seen yesterday, or you may not, we did a little media event, and one of our insights is that we were able to use some AI tooling to link together stock market pricing, stock market performance, and flight performance.
We talked about that last year.
Yeah, indeed. So we're now able to see which sectors and indeed which companies are using the jets more than others. So although overall we see corporate flight departments actually sliding, what we see from this research is that corporate activity or corporate demand has shifted to fractionals. And we can see the companies behind that. We can see the sectors represented by those companies. So we're seeing, frankly, supersonic growth, like 15, 20%, 25% growth from certain companies that are well known to be right in the kind of middle of the AI storm. So to get to your AI question on how we're using it, yes, we're using it on the research side. To use it on the front end with customers on our dashboards, the challenge that we have is we just got an astonishing amount of data. And you probably know just how expensive AI can be. You've got to be very careful, and we've been very careful. We are going to come out and, coming out with a chatbot is obviously kind of step one, and JetNet Group do that, part of our group. But obviously, what they can focus on at JetNet is, a fairly limited silo of ownership data that doesn't change every week.
Yeah.
Whereas what we're looking at is like just billions of data points around flight activity. So we've got to be quite deliberate about how we're going to move that into a product. But we definitely are in the short term.
You mentioned tracking stock market trends and correlations. Theoretically, you've got all these stock markets, these publicly held companies that you see big ticks up in.
Yeah.
Can you correlate, or this company had a big tick in their stock price, there's no fractional or jet ownership correlated to it, so theoretically maybe someone should pick up the phone and call them to say, hey, I see your stock's moving, you have no fractional, what are you doing for travel?
Yeah, we already do those sorts of alerts, but they're mainly around deals, potential deals. So we're tracking corporates to destinations where there may be some deal discussion, but I agree, there are lots of other angles, and that's a relevant one.
What do you think is the biggest, you may have mentioned already the sheer volume of the data, but what do you think is the biggest barrier in when you're people are probably asking for prediction data, right? What's the biggest barrier in getting accurate prediction data to the people that want it?
Yeah. Prediction data in our industry, you would have thought, it is on-demand aviation. It's not scheduled. So it starts with a big question mark of, like, when are people going to fly? But actually, if you can mine the data, there's a lot of predictability in that industry. The same people, whether they're business or leisure, are going to go to the same places. They're going to go to their houses, going to go to their yachts, they're going to go to their board meetings. So we're really excited about what we can, unleash in terms of forecasts. In fact, this is why I'm trying to pitch you our latest dashboard, because we do actually have a forecast module. So you can look even down to, one tail sign. What are the last 30 months of activity? And what are we projecting in terms of the next 12 months of activity?
Yeah, and it's probably from tail to even airport, right?
Tail, airport, OEM, aircraft type.
Aircraft type, yeah. For someone who's running a maintenance business and they maintain Citation 10s, where are the most Citation 10s going to be in the next year?
I was thinking like maybe you could be a stock picker. You could like give based on this data.
At least with aviation stocks.
Yeah, or it sounds like in general.
Now, Doug, we talked last year on the AI and technology standpoint. We talked about that we were in the first inning of AI and technology from a client booking standpoint. What inning do you think we're in now?
Well, I would just say one of the things that I find interesting is when subscribers come and say, I heard this or that, or something about some program and what they're offering. And obviously, because we keep our database pretty up to date, doesn't sound right. And so I'll say, where did you find that? And they used AI, Google AI, whatever it is, ChatGPT. And I find that I think where it really works is with what Richard was saying, when it's your internal data and maybe then matching. But where it doesn't work is they're picking up stuff that's, from companies that are out of business or 5 years old, and AI is feeding back to them in a very authoritative voice. And so I always tell the subscribers, well, that's artificial intelligence. We actually have actual intelligence, but I've heard what you're saying, from these tech-led brokers that say that they're using AI to improve sourcing and things like that, but I'd say that's a TBD. I haven't seen anything that anyone showed me where AI is outperforming, the traditional broker who, has Avinode or FlyEasy and then is making 10 different phone calls and sending text messages. So I remain yet to be convinced that AI is actually impacting the booking of travel, but that's not going to stop the press releases as we know.
Yeah. So maybe we're in the second inning of the AI into aviation.
I don't know, maybe
race.
I'd say bottom of the first, and it's been a long inning.
There's a lot more to come. I'll tell you
And a
that.
couple pitching changes on the way.
When I look at AI from a operational standpoint, I think people they should be doing the easy things first. Those things are updating a trip sheet with a new name, updating a time and checking, is this airport open at this time?
Right.
That's when I look, what are those simple things that AI can do to save people time that then a salesperson or a dispatcher can use to build the human things, build relationships, have a conversation with someone to understand what they really want out of a flight, out of a partnership. So all of my work in that space, which is small but substantial, is what are the small things that you can bring to an operation someone that's typing in KVNY or KLAS or, any of those airports, you shouldn't have to do that anymore. Those simple things, and then the data reproduction. So when you book with a broker and you give them your information, they're taking that, they're probably copying and pasting or retyping it to someone else, and then they're retyping it again into their systems. So it's like those are the things when I look at AI, though the small things I think will have big impacts to let people work on the bigger things.
And also, because I used to run a brokerage way back 20 years, a private jet brokerage, and the ability which we should be employing right now to look at every request coming into brokerage and say, right, I know from every record that we've dealt with what the opportunities are here, what the proportionate chances of this closing.
Yeah. And that's the person I should call and not just send a quote to, right?
I do think though, and I use AI when I'm going through like court filings that are dozens or hundreds of pages and things like that, is you still need some type of human interaction to make sure what the AI is picking up is the relevant information.
Yeah.
Because sometimes even when you click through the summaries and then you read the actual, factual, what's in the court document, the inference could be a little bit different. So listen, I think AI is going to change all of our lives, but I'm not sure that it's going to change it by next NBAA.
Doug, for maybe smaller operators, the majority of operators are 10 airplanes or less. What do you think is if they want to dip their toe into WINGX data, what do you think would be the first thing you would suggest they do first just to maybe start to utilize data more in their operations?
Well, look, it depends which part of the business they're competing in. If it's a charter company, 135, they should look at the competitive intensity of the airport pairs that are addressable to their fleet. Because assume it's a small company, it's got a regional concentration. So they should look at the demand that's being generated in the market, look at the competitive intensity, work out seasonally where the opportunities are, where people may be missing out.
And Doug, for you, for operators or charter companies, what would you suggest that they use private jet card comparisons for if they want to get some outside guidance of market intelligence, competitiveness? Like where do you think other operators and 135 companies are using your data well?
Well, I think, we have two sets of data. We have the consumer-driven data that's part of our $500 a year subscription, where we help the consumer figure out which solutions best fit their needs, so we save them time and educate them about what the different options are and how they compare. And then we do our annual, we call it the Jet Card Report, probably a bad name because it includes, Fractional and all that stuff. And with that, we amalgamate all of the requests from the consumers, what they were looking for when they're in the buying process, and then we do an annual survey. So we get over 500 responses for the annual survey. Last year we did 670 analysis, and so we package that up. That's about 400 pages, and that's basically what the consumer wants, what they were looking for when they were shopping, and then also their satisfaction with what they bought, as well as hot topics like sustainability and how important is sustainability going to be, and sustainability programs going to be to their next purchase and things like that. And so there's different access points for different people in the industry. A small broker that's selling wholesale or selling to people who are doing fixed rate jet cards, they appreciate the data because they can sell, see how is their product, reaching the end consumer. I think there are a lot of operators and brokers that don't have guaranteed jet cards and memberships, but they're thinking like, do I want to have more of a retail presence in a brand? Yeah. And so the jet card report essentially is a roadmap on what the customer wants in terms of a jet card. And then, there are subscribers from the business side. They take a look at our database, which is basically an Excel spreadsheet. It's been updated 144 times this year, but they can take a look at it and they can get a sense for, what the competition is offering and things like that. I think the biggest danger, Daniel, is, and when people ask me that question, I'm saying just because another company is offering this, you have to look at what's profitable for your company. What can you do? Because the fastest way, I think, to lose money in this business is trying to be like other companies that either have a fleet or have other resources and things like that. So being a provider of data to the industry, I always say, like, please, don't make any big business decisions and say, oh, I saw it in private jet card comparisons. Yeah. You guys, Daniel, it's a tough business and it's a tough business to make money on. But yeah, they do use the data, and I think it serves the industry well because it gives people a better idea of how the programs are structured. Because when you look at the brochure, sometimes it's hard to tell.
Yeah. This episode is brought to you by Video Valet. If you care about having the best in-flight experience on your private flights, Video Valet offers up to 1.2 million movies, shows, magazines, and newspapers, all available on board without the need of expensive Wi-Fi or hardware. Eric and his team at Video Valet deliver fully customized iPads to ensure that your preferences are met on every single flight. Whether providing my kids with their favorite shows or allowing me and my wife to catch up on breaking news, I personally could never travel without it again. Video Valet is offering a special promotion to Ironbird podcast listeners. Mention Ironbird, and Video Valet will add one free fully personalized iPad at no additional cost. Now, to the Ironbird podcast. The funny thing is, I think most operators and brokers are so head down on their own company, their own product, that they don't look to get educated on other products. And even with airplane operators, they don't look to see, what's other Citation 10s doing in the market? And how can I set my expectations based on the market, right? And I think both the data from both of you is so important that I think it's also underutilized. That I think if operators look at the WINGX data, if operators and brokers purchase the private jet car comparisons, they're going to be so far ahead of most people. They're going to be much better educated, not only for themselves, but also when they're speaking to the consumer. When an airplane owner brings an airplane and say, hey, can this airplane do 1,000 hours? Someone with WINGX data said, yes, it can. Or when someone's trying to negotiate a jet car and say, I have a jet car price at this. You can say, well, here's the ones, and here's why I would or wouldn't do that company.
But, and this is where I tell people, they'll look at like the daily minimums and things like that, and they have a 2-hour daily minimum on light jets, and they see other people have 60 minutes. And, my message to them is, listen, if you have the 2-hour daily minimum because the way you source light jets, that's what you need to do to make money at the guaranteed rates, don't change it. Yeah. And so our focus is really the consumer. Yeah. What we're really trying to help out is the consumer, figure out, which ways are the best ways to fly privately. I think one of the biggest challenges the industry has in terms of the consumer is the consumer's business is, they have car dealerships or they make widgets, and they've spent the better part of 2 weeks talking to 4 or 5 different companies. They're now confused because everyone slags each other. The brochures really don't tell you. And so they feel like, listen, the reason I'm spending a lot of money to fly privately is to save time. And this buying process is costing me a lot of time. So for $500, give it some clarity. And so I appreciate what you're saying about, the business to business side. We're really, the place we really want to focus is helping the consumer figure out who they should be talking to. And I think where it does help on the seller side is, the sellers spend a lot of times talking, to unqualified consumers. And so when people are coming through the private jet card comparison system, if they're calling you and we've done an analysis, it's because based on what they told us they're looking for, your program fits their needs.
Yeah.
And so now you're talking to somebody who's qualified to buy.
Doug, we did a prediction last year of what the data said. When we're back here next year sitting on this couch, what is the data telling you that we're going to be looking at from a flying percentage standpoint? Are we going to be up? Are we going to be down?
Well, look, okay, if I follow the trajectory, we sat down last year, as I said, we were like minus 1.5%, minus 2%. We got through Q1, we were more like, for the first quarter, we were up 1 or 2%, 1.5, yeah? And so it looked like we were going to rebalance.
Yeah.
Then came Q2, tariff chaos,
Yeah.
lots of panic, mini market downturn. Frankly, it looked like could be a flat year.
Yeah.
Q3 is where it's really surprised. It's taken off. We've had 6 or 7% increase in the US just in Q3.
Wow.
So it's a difficult one. If I'm going to extrapolate, I'll probably say, okay, we'll be up 3 or 4% this year, solid.
But really, it's that quarter by quarter growth is what we should be looking at.
It's been volatile, right?
Yeah.
Because we've had this macro, and in the macro picture, there are some serious downside risks as well as upside.
Yeah.
We know that this equity market in some aspects is overvalued, and we know there's a strong correlation between that equity market and the usage of private jets. Every previous downturn in our industry, and that includes the activity side of it, has correlated to macro shocks. If we have another macro shock, all bets are off. I think, though, given the kind of fundamentals from an industry point of view, we would see consolidating growth next year. That would be my definition of it, consolidating growth.
Have you tracked the debt cycles, and as the rates have gone down, what that's done to flying?
Yeah, unfortunately, the correlation is really pretty weak there. Yes, it affects business. Inflation is generally slightly more, kind of negatively effective on biz jet flying. Because on the interest rate side, a lot of these purchases are cash anyway, so it doesn't have that direct impact.
Okay. Doug, what are you thinking a year from now when we sit down again? Are you going to say, hey, it was another good growth year for fractional, or do you think charter is going to start to take a bite out of that fractional growth?
I think, the pie ebbs and flows, which slice becomes bigger and which contracts a little bit. Year to date, we're up like 26%.
On the fractional side, or?
No, just in terms of us, in terms of subscription revenue.
So that means more consumers are interested.
Yeah,
in
terms of the analysis requests, it's pretty consistent. The last couple of years that people are saying we expect to fly, I think the average is 41 to 42 hours in the next 12 months. For all the talk about bigger planes, the core of at least our subscribers are flying in light and mid-sized jets. I'd say the other thing too, and where I don't think we do a good job representing the industry, 80% of our subscribers, 50% of them do use ad hoc charter, 80% of them are in a programmatic offering, so either fractional or a jet card. Yeah. And so I think the numbers I share with you guys represents the stickiness of jet cards and fractional.
Yeah.
And we all know Rob Wiesenthal from Blade. If you ask him what happened to all those people who came to Blade, for their on-demand charter business in 21 and 22, he says they lost 90% of them. when we survey our subscribers, including people whose subscription expired, 95% of the people who started flying COVID or since are still flying privately. But again, 80% of them are in some type of a deposit program or a fractional program. And so I think it's a tale of, two types of products. The person who's dealing with just simply chartering when they need it, trip by trip, those people are probably more likely to hold off in the next quarter because of interest rates or something that happened. Whereas once you make a 5-year commitment to FlexJet or NetJets or PlaneSense, or you put $200,000 or $400,000 down with a jet card, you're probably going to use the funds. So from our perspective, I think things look good, but I put that with an asterisk because jet cards and fractional ownership is just part of the larger, the larger market. So that doesn't help the industry if the people who are booking the ad hoc trips, just flight by flight, if there's something like Richard said, where they pull back suddenly.
Well, I really look forward to sitting down again with you guys next year to look at what we talked about, how accurate or inaccurate we are. I think it just goes to show it's an unpredictable market, and it's very difficult to really know what the consumer's going to want in 6 months to a year, and sometimes it's even difficult to know what actually happens. But with the data that I think you both provide, I think it's going to help every single operator or consumer make informed decisions than just kind of shooting in the dark. So I want to thank you both for joining me, and I look forward to talking to you again, hopefully next year.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Daniel.
You got it.
Appreciate it.
Thanks.
Yeah, appreciate it.